Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. Jesus. Okay, I'll admit it. I have abandonment issues. I suppose I have most of my life, but there's nothing like the holidays to bring up childhood issues, right? If you're a follower of my blog, first of all, thank you. Secondly, you've probably read me discuss the journey I've been on the past year and a half. In the spring of 2012, I began trying my hand at meditation. Nothing fancy, just intentionally spending some quiet time alone every morning, and honestly, it changed my life. It allowed me to be in touch with my inner life, my subconscious mind, and the truth of my experience in ways I had not previously known. So, from that time, I have lived life on purpose rather than on accident. I have been intentional about my spiritual and emotional growth, opening myself not only to the mysteries of the universe, but the mystery of my own soul. There's lots of stuff going on in there. For our soul is an endless sea of life force, our intimate and powerful connection to source energy, often called God, better known as love, pure, unconditional, unadulterated love. But I digress. So, in my efforts to better excavate and examine my inner self, I often read, meditate, journal, write, and or ask questions before going to bed, with faith that my soul or subconscious mind will offer an answer or insight as my conscious mind is at rest. Last week, after reading and then meditating on life and the transitions and change that often accompany it, which I plan to blog about in coming weeks, I was offered a dream. To make a long story short, in the dream, I was grieving my grandmother who died earlier this year, literally snotting and crying, when these words came out of my mouth: she left me. If anyone knows me well, they know that my grandmother raised me and we had an unusually close relationship. In many ways, outside of my children, she was the closest and dearest person to me. So the words, she left me, didn't seem to point to the obvious, her death, but even within the dream, I understood them as speaking to deeper sentiment and feelings. And to complicate matters, in the dream, my mother was present and began to reprimand me for my tears. While this would never happen in reality, in fact, she would be right there with me with her considerable tears and snot of her own. However, upon hearing her rebuke of me in the dream, and you know how foggy dreams can be, but I either said or thought in anger, just like you left me as a child. When I awoke from the dream, my soul was troubled for two reasons. First, I was troubled because of the words or thoughts toward my mother, who, while she was not a very good mother to me as a young child, has made phenomenal efforts to be a good mother and grandmother to me and my children now. I didn't want to accept that maybe some part of me had not forgiven her. I really want all of me to forgive her, and it hurts my feelings to think some part of me has not. Secondly, I was also upset because now I have no doubt that my childhood trauma was still lingering, even after I thought I had put it to rest. All of my life, I have felt left out and left behind. Yes, I recognize it began with the absence of both of my parents, particularly my mother, leaving my grandmother to raise me. While my father was in prison during most of my childhood, he wrote often, and I actually felt loved by him and seemed to believe that he would be there if only he could. However, my mother's drug addiction created a vicious cycle that was filled with lies and broken promises. And while I knew she wrestled her own demons, it didn't mean I wasn't left with thoughts and feelings of inadequacy, asking myself why she simply didn't love me enough to quit doing drugs. I am fully aware that this is an irrational thought, especially after I became better educated on the pathology of addiction. However, the emotional wounds it left in my 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 year old self clearly have not been as easily erased as I would like. So, as I have nursed but too often concealed and hid the pain of my childhood, which was exponentially made worse by the racism and homophobic abuse I received from my childhood peers, I have subconsciously acted out this abandonment narrative over and over. It has appeared in friendships and most often in romantic relationships. It has created a fearful, panic stricken Ray that wanted to trust but didn't know how. A Ray that misinterpreted others' actions as personal rejection. And a Ray that nearly ruined his own life in pursuits of perfection, over achievement, and the approval of others. But all of that was over, or so I thought. Don't get me wrong, I am 200% better than I once was. My healing has been a process. However, this dream reminds me that the process isn't over, so I must therefore be diligent to question my thoughts and motives and be mindful of my emotional responses. So there's nothing wrong with being hurt or needing healing as long as you recognize it as such. The scary thought is of someone who is deeply wounded and in need of care, but can't or refuses to see themselves as such, and therefore stumbles through life unaware, out of tune with their inner self, and struggling with an ego willing to do most anything to protect and defend itself. This person is dangerous, so be aware. So, in this next stage of transition, I am thankful for a loving God who would care enough to show me me. I am thankful for universal intelligence and the innate wisdom of my own soul that, if I listen, always directs me back to center, lovingly showing me how to move forward. And last but not least, I am thankful for you. I am thankful that we have each other, and if we choose to accept it, have partners in each other as we walk this journey called life. 4. This is not the end of our story. Our best days are not behind us, they are ahead of us. So today, let's not fight our pain, but embrace it, learn from it, and be strengthened by it. Ask and we shall receive. Seek and we shall find. And even when what we find is painful, it's still all good because it's preparing us to receive all of the big things coming. Note, if you're new to the site, it might be helpful to read the first introductory post. Also, feel free to post your questions or comments here, and you can always reach out to me on Twitter at Ray C. Jordan using the hashtag BigThingsComing. Copyright 2013. And as always, thank you for reading and listening.